Great. I think we can start now. So, hi everyone. Welcome. We're happy to see you all here and welcome to today's webinar called Addressing the Gender Gap: How to Make Urban Mobility Work for All. So it's a pleasure to have you here. My name is Nayla Saniour. I will be moderating this session. The event is co-organized by All Things Urban and EIT Urban Mobility. So All Things Urban is the largest career platform for urbanists with an international community of more than 75,000 professionals working on city challenges worldwide. All Things Urban provides career guidance, educational resources, professional networking opportunities, and helps urbanists at every stage of their careers. And today, EIT Urban Mobility brings you the learning platform UMX, Urban Mobility Explained. UMX is a learning platform that offers dozens of free online courses for professionals who want to upskill or reskill their knowledge in urban mobility. The courses are completely free, self-paced, very dynamic, and if you want, you can get an official certification from EIT for a small fee. And one of the courses offered by UMX is especially relevant for today's topic. And it will help you dive deeper into the topic of gender gap in our cities. So I will share the links of the courses in the chats and we invite you to check them out. Here you go. So as you get settled, just a quick ground rules. I want to let you know that this webinar will be recorded and we will send this recording in a follow-up email for everyone who registered for the event. But still, thank you for joining live. Also, as a reminder for how things work on Zoom, you have the option of writing in the chat section. Make sure you select the option everyone, not host and panelist, in case it's not set by default. But mainly, if you want to ask questions during the webinar, you can write in the dedicated Q&A section. This will help us find your questions and answer them, and you can even upvote some questions. In case you don't find the Q&A and the chat right in your menu, you can check on the three dots more and go there. And let us know also where you're coming from. So you can drop us a message in the chat. What part of the world are you in right now? So hello from Madrid on my side. And let's get started. So we're here today to talk about mobility in cities and the gender gap. And you see a little poll that just popped on your screens or in your menus. And this is something that we're gonna use over the webinar to check about your knowledge and about what your impressions. So you can already answer the poll. So today, the topic of mobility and gender gap is about how we move through cities depending on who is moving. Because the structural differences that are present in our societies are mirrored in the transport and mobility as well. And because not all urban mobility is designed with equal access for everyone. So in this webinar, we want to shed light on the existing reality of gender differences in mobility. We want to show you why it matters, and not only for women. And we want to show you how things can be improved to ensure a more inclusive mobility for all. So if you work in mobility, we hope this will encourage you to address the gender gap whether you are planning, designing, or implementing projects and policies. And if you don't work in the field, we hope it'll bring you a new understanding of a topic that impacts our daily lives. So to tackle all this, we have our two great speakers today, Dr. Ines Kawgan-Kagan and Lina Mosshammer. Ines is the managing director at the AEM Institute. Ines, you're a recognized expert on gender and mobility. And Ines will kick off the discussion with a presentation on why gender equity in mobility matters. So Ines, you'll talk about the lack of gender-specific data and the far-reaching impact on urban planning and policymaking. I'll share the LinkedIn of Ines in the chat. Although it will be flooded with little messages, but you can find it there. And our second guest speaker is Lina. Lina is the CEO and co-founder of the inclusive mobility platform Point End. Lina will connect theory to practice. You'll show us real-world examples of successful gender-sensitive mobility solutions through case studies. We'll look at how thoughtful, inclusive design can transform actually urban transport systems and make cities safer, more accessible for all. Also sharing your LinkedIn in the chat, so you'll receive probably lots of messages after today. And now, before giving the floor to our speakers, I want to let you know the structure of the session today. So first we'll have the presentations by Ines and Lina. And while the speakers are presenting, we invite you to post all your questions in the Q&A section. As I said, preferably not in the chat so we can find them. And we'll answer them towards the end of the session. You can also vote for the questions you would like to see answered, and they will go up. So after the presentations, we will have the Q&A with the speakers. I will first start by asking some questions to Ines and Lina about their career path and advice for people who are interested in working in a similar field and using the same lens and approach to their work. And then we will select some of your questions from all of you who are joining in our Q&A part. And as I said in the beginning, you have a few polls that will pop up during the session, so you can answer them on the spot. You will see them under the button polls and quizzes. And the first one that we already posted and which we had launched a moment ago is, have you worked with the topic of gender in your field of work? And the answers are yes, extensively, only in specific projects, no, but I'm interested in learning more, and I'm not sure I fully understand what gender means in this context. And for this, without further ado, Ines, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Let me quickly share my screen. I have to warn everyone, I'm still a bit cold. I'm sorry for that. Just a second. This one. Now you should see exactly the same thing as before, because that's my first slide as well. And that's my second. Just, yeah, that's good. Okay, so yeah, hi, welcome from my side as well. Thank you for the invitation here, and thanks for all the people who joined our webinar here. You will get the slides afterwards, so you don't have to take any notes, and that's why I have another slide with my details in there as well. Yes, it's an older photograph of me, but I think you can still recognize me. I just saw in the poll that there was one person who said they don't know anything about gender, and there were like 15 people who extensively worked on the topic already. So that's like really cool, and that's so good to hear. And I just want to give a quick reminder what gender is in the context that we are talking here about. And of course, I start with what gender isn't. It is not the biological sex of a person. It is the social role that a person has in our society. It's a social construct. And there is this cute concept. I really like it, the gender bed person. You can Google it now afterwards. It's really, really good to understand the different dimensions that we can have a look at and what aspects play a role. And for us now here, it is rather important that we understand that with the social role that we have, that is typically associated with being a woman, for instance, those roles, they lead to our daily activities. The tasks that we have during the day. And since mobility is not an end in itself, because we are outside, moving around, going somewhere because we have to do something or we have to be somewhere, that means that our mobility is gender typical as well. And this leads to things that we can see in like the pattern where we move, when, how, where, when, how, why, the other question. And we see differences in the way how we experience and perceive mobility or public space. We see that there are differences in the access of resources, to resources, and we see that the infrastructure is used in or can be used in gender specific ways as well. So we are currently, yeah, that's the thing I want to tell you, we are currently taking all the humans that we have in a lot of projects, and we just like slap them together in one blob of average. And then we try to make a mobility solution, some design that fits this average human that actually doesn't exist in this way. And the interesting part when you consider that is that you lose a lot of information about the people, because some things cancel out. Other groups are just like not visible. And the interesting part, which I'm going to talk about later then, is the heavily biased, how to say that, is a heavy bias towards the male standard. So that average that we work with is not even like the actual average, not that the average would be beneficial at some point. But this bias is just basically due to gender data gap, which we have in mobility as well. But a bit more to that in a minute. Okay, so how does gender actually affect now mobility? There are, of course, when you consider gender as like the gender typical task divisions in daily life, that women take more care of the children, of household responsibilities. So their trips differ from the ones of men, who are quite more often full-time employed. And you see this little picture here. It's a visualization of a so-called trip chaining. That's when you just like, as a part-time working mother, have to do so many things, and you just connect the little trips during the day in order to manage everything. And if you have like a typical male full-time working person, then you see those more linear paths back and forth, and not the trip chaining. So another thing is that we see that men tend to use cars more frequently and drive further distances with it. Women, on the other side, they use public transport more often, and this is more evident in the Global South, for instance. And this all has to do, of course, as well with the access to resources, like I mentioned before, because we have to have money in order to either buy a car or maintain a car. And another resource would be in this matter, that the car in the household, the first car in the household, is typically for the male for commuting to work, and for instance in Germany, like the second car is for the mother to or for the woman to drive. And another resource would be, for instance, the driver's license, which is not equally distributed, especially for the older generations. We see there a gap, but at least, like for instance in Germany, it's closing for younger generations. Then specifically, the topic of safety and security is a huge issue for women, that can restrain the mobility. That can lead to strategies to avoid certain areas, certain times during the day, or it can lead to just like not leaving the house at all, because you are not feeling secure outside. And this is something that many men do not experience, and therefore it's quite often not addressed from the beginning, but rather than at some point when people see that there are differences or that there are incidents. Another thing is the participation, because mobility, and more specifically transport, used to be a very technical field, and a lot of men are more interested, more men than women are interested in technical fields. And this is, I'm pretty sure that here today are a lot of women as well. When we talk about social stuff, when it comes to mobility, then you just like have a higher share of women. And so that's the first like idea, that you can shift away from transport, from the technical term, to mobility as more like the option of being mobile, the possibility. And there is so much evidence when it comes to like looking at gender differences in mobility. I wrote an article which is currently under review, but at some point I will publish it and make it available then. And there you find a lot of evidence. It was just like, I think from all my years gathered and slapped into a paper. Okay, and now you wonder like, okay, why is there still a gap? Why does this happen? Why aren't we further? And the first thing is, of course, we have an underrepresentation in the field. It's traditionally male dominated, that work field. And there's this thing when you design services or products, you come from your own perspective, and that's just like your approach. You just like see the world through your eyes, and then you just like design it accordingly to the problems that you experience. And in combination with that underrepresentation, of course, there is missing a lot of issues that other people than men face. And another point is the androcentrism, which means that the man is the standard in our societies. I find the example pretty neat when you think about like e-scooters and you have the brakes. The first ones I tried, I couldn't, or I had to let go the handle in order to brake, which is like a huge safety issue because you shouldn't let go to brake, because my hands were just simply too small, though I consider them as just like average-sized female hands. Another point is the gender insensitivity. Of course, if you've never experienced any of that issue, discrimination stuff, that is just like not affecting you at all, you are not aware of that. And even worse, some people do not care. And even worse, some people say, okay, if they get more, then something will be taken away from me. So there is just like a huge issue in the awareness still. And of course, the last one is the double standard. For instance, the gender pay gap would be an example here. What we need to consider when we have a look at gender-sensitive mobility design and planning, that we cannot just like compare men and women and not have a look at other categories, because we are all categorized by several variables. And this means that a young woman has a different approach as, for instance, a middle-aged woman with children. So we need to have a look at the intersection of those characterizations and consider the needs accordingly. I brought this example and I'm just like really excited because I think this just visualizes where we have a lot of blind spots in the current field, because we focus a lot on paid work and commuting to work. And this is a little figure which is from a sample from Germany. On the bottom you have men, and the second row is women. And yes, in the data set, there was only male and female. So those are only full-time employees. And what you can see here, the blue part means that those people, they were using the car on a daily or almost daily basis. Orange is 1 to 3 times a week, and then it just like gets even less frequently. And you see that men and women, it's just like not such a big difference, a small one, but it's still okay. When you have a look now at the part-time working people, then you see that for the men, it just decreases to below half of the men answered that they use it daily or almost daily, but even more women use the car then on a daily basis. And this is all due to the additional work that you have as a woman in part-time job, because that is the main reason for women to work part-time, taking care of the children. And for men, it's not. So all this mobility that is related with caretaking, with household responsibilities, childcare responsibilities, the mobility of care is considered to being managed with a car as well. And this is something that we overlook quite often. So we have then, like I said, we have this standard. And this is, yeah, just wrote down like we're male, healthy, you are able to do everything, you can afford a lot, you understand everything, and you work full time, of course. And it's just like, no, no, there he comes. And he's just happy because everything suits him. The thing is that this characterization, this profile, is actually a minority of the population. And nevertheless, everyone else is considered as the exception. And I've experienced that myself when I was at conferences talking to people, asking them about, okay, what's like, how would that work? Or for me, it doesn't work. And they always said, oh, yeah, you're just an exception. And that was just because I have 4 children and this is something for them. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know people with 4 children. So I basically didn't count. So the problem with that standard is, though, that we take this standard and we collect the data that we are using in order to generate insights as well from this male perspective. And therefore, we have a gender data gap in mobility. And this, yeah, gender data gap, we have a gender data gap in a lot of things, but in mobility as well. And what we are not covering with our current data is how complex our trip chains are when we have care responsibility, and not only for children, but from family members as well, or for others. And another thing is the trip purposes can be totally different for men, but we usually focus on the commuting things. But there is a lot more going on. We don't see well, we see issues with the vehicle safety data, crash test dummies. For some of you who know that women face a much higher risk of severe and lethal injuries in car accidents. And then, of course, in the questionnaires and surveys, a lot of attitudes and expectations are covered from a male perspective, and the things, the aspects that are there for women are less covered. So, and there's much more. I wrote a paper about that, which is freely available on ResearchGate as a preprint. You can download it using the QR code, or it will be sent afterwards in the follow-up email as well. So, and I am already summarizing. So mobility is not gender neutral. It's neither from the evidence side, like how we move, where we move, when, what mode of transport we use, nor is it gender neutral from the services that are provided and the infrastructure, because it is designed from a male perspective still. And we know that there is still a lot of awareness that need to be created for the topic. So people cannot say, oh, it's a niche topic, or it's just like, let's do it on the side in an extra project. It has to be incorporated into projects from the beginning. And very important, we need the gender sensitive data with an intersectional approach in order to have information about the reality of lives of all people. And the final saying, the final sentence is that just if you improve the mobility in a gender sensitive way, you are not taking away anything from anyone else. You just make it more inclusive for all. So it should be a win-win situation, except that it's a bit of work. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ines. We saw so many concise ideas in your presentation really quickly, covering a very important topic, how gender impacts the tasks we do, our daily patterns, the way women travel differently than men, the way we move through city differently, why there's still a gap in understanding gender, especially the gender data gap. And about this data gap, we just launched a poll about who is attending this session. And to answer your question, Ines, we see that over, well, very much 3/4 of our audience today is female. and 20% is male and non-binary as well. So that answers a bit some curiosity about the gender data that we had over here. We encourage you to start asking your questions in the Q&A section, which is not the chat, it's the other little button next to it, so we can pick some of them and answer at the end of the session. We're starting to have some questions in the chat. I would recommend the other, but that would be fine. We can pick it up. And now, Ines, thank you so much again. We'll give the floor to Lina, our second guest speaker. So Lina, without further ado, the floor is yours to show us practically what does that mean.
Thank you very much. So now I try to give you some examples and some insights on what is the situation and what we can actually do in especially in the field of mobility. So hello from my side. I'm happy to be here today. I will talk a bit about transport solutions and how they are designed today, and give some examples on what we can do better. And I think this could be also some inspiration for the urban planning part, even though I'm very much focusing on transport solutions with the examples I have. I'm already presented. My name is Lina. We are a team who is very much focusing on this topic of inclusivity. So not just the gender gap, but the diversity gap in all its facets, even though it's quite hard to do it all. I also want to say, I'm sorry, I'm also very much focused on Europe. We have done a lot of projects also beyond Europe, but I think it's still, there are some valuable insights also for all the others who are joining us from all over the world. Ines has already talked about this a little, but when you talk about the development of products in mobility, we still have a big problem on the gap and on the knowledge gap, and also on the missing perspectives. So what is still done in market research is questions like, what was the main trip purpose of your trip? And this is relatively easily when you have a trip like on the left side, which goes from A to B. It's quite easy to say what kind of mode of transport maybe you used, even though walking to the car is also part of it. And you can also say what was the trip purpose. But if it's more complex, it's of course more difficult to answer this question. And we still work with data which doesn't really show anything of the right part. And sometimes we don't even know how the data was collected and who collected it and what kind of perspectives they brought in. And what we did first was to ask the question, like, what is the situation? And we did a survey in the German-speaking area, so Germany, Switzerland, and Austria. And we asked 100 mobility companies on what kind of the perspectives they already bring in. So who is on the team in those companies, who is designing the products, but also what kind of data they collect and what kind of knowledge they have on the users and non-users who are or should be actually using their products. We focused on gender. I have to admit it was mainly about the share of women, also due to the lack maybe also of knowledge from the people who answered this survey to go more into depth on the topic. And when you take the first perspective on the team, it's clearly visible. I mean, we know that there is a 19% of share of women in Europe in the transport sector, and this share even went down from the last survey. But also what we saw in those 100 companies from like different fields of transport is that the bigger the company, the less women are in that company. So the share, these less than 20%, are especially when it's a big company. But then it has, of course, also really big influence, because usually those bigger companies are also the ones providing a lot of the services we are using. And the other part, which is really important, it's not just the missing share of women in the companies itself, but also when it comes to the people making decisions and designing the products. It's twice as many women in HR and human resources in those companies than it is in product development and in management. And those are like not the only, but very important positions which are influencing the development of the products, and also influencing what kind of perspectives, what kind of data is even collected. And the other part which I was talking about is to take a look at what kind of data, what do they know about their current users and maybe non-users. And a third of the mobility companies we asked do not collect any detailed information on age, gender, or for example, place of residence. So they don't even know who are their users. And what is maybe even more, yeah, it's a big gender gap everywhere because it's just 17% of those companies. So 17 out of 100 companies actually said that they do analyze the data in relation to gender specific differences. So they have actually no clue about what's going on, if you say it bluntly. And I know there is a big issue with the GDPR because all of them are kind of scared to actually do something with personal data, but there are many options to overcome this. You can anonymize this data in many cases, but there are also other options, which I will show you in a minute, where what you can do to still know more about your customers. And in the end, it comes down to if there are more women in management, you can see that there are more women on the team. And you can also see that more women, they have more women as users. And you can also see that when they analyze their data, then they also have, so there's also a tendency that those companies that actually work on this and collect data, they also have a higher share of women as users. So in the end, we hope it's added value for everybody if you consider this, not just for this topic, but of course for all other diversity topics as well. So now I come to the examples. But just with that example, I want to show you this topic of why it is important to have as many perspectives within a team, maybe also beyond. This is one of our startups, 8pins, which is in our Better Mobility Accelerator. And what I think is really nice, they are working in the field of sports. So they work with mountain bikes and they develop those telescopic seat posts. I don't know who knows them. If you push a button, the seat goes up. If you push it again, the seat goes down. And usually use that in mountain bikes. But what are they doing right now? They see, hey, this would be really nice for cargo bikes and city bikes. Because actually, and I think everybody who is below like 170 maybe knows that it's actually quite hard to put your foot down on the ground. And if you're, for example, driving with a cargo bike with kids in front, it would be really nice to put the foot down all together. And you can just push that button like on a mountain bike, the seat goes down and you can put the whole foot on the ground. And this is something where you have to realize that there is a use case. And just then you can maybe use the product for something else or design the product. I mean, it took almost a century for the rolling suitcase to really that people saw that there is actually a need for that. And we do not need to wait for 100 years for other products as well. So if you bring out in those perspectives, Ines already said it with you. So I always say you plan for what you know and you plan for like your reality, but sometimes you have to leave that reality and also bring in other perspectives to see a potential. And I said I want to bring in some examples what you can do in the field of data collection and also to bring in these perspectives if they're maybe not on a team. And what else you can do if you're scared of GDPR or if just in general, what you can do. Cyclebee is also one of our startups, which was part of our program last year. And they are developing cycling, like an app for cycling trips. So not just the daily trips, but really going for 1 day or longer. And they are currently developing this product. They want to bring in like the issue of safety much more. They really want to focus on what is needed. For example, playgrounds and stuff, whatever you want to have on the route, which is not just being maybe sports and active, but also have a safe trip with your family. And they are building a community to build that. So actually already in the development, they have so-called early bees. So all the early bees are a community, they have a podcast and everything, but they can be part of the development and are included through testings, through all stages, but also through different kind of methods. So they are really able to not just bring in their own perspectives, but also the different ones which are potentially their users. So this is, I think, a really nice option to not just have your own view, but already in the development to build a community, to have different kinds of views included for your mobility product. And another project, Ines already talked about the handles, which are really difficult in the beginning with all those scooters. Voi is a scooter sharing company, which is, I think, well known. We did an interview also through our our questionnaire, our study with them. And what they do is they also do not use the actual data they collect through the general one, but they do additional questionnaires. And they also published a paper specifically on gender. So you can also download that on their website to have a bit more in-depth view. But what I think is nice that they actually see that it's an economic value and advantage if you take a closer look on your users, but also on your non-users. So they did additional, and I hope they're doing it several times, questionnaires with users, with regular users, with some people who have just used them once, but also with new users. And they also did it specifically with women. And they found a lot of things which they could improve. And one of them was what Ines were talking about. They reduced the size of the handles for also if you have a smaller hand, so you can now also drive a bit more safely. But it was also about where you position the scooters, maybe what kind of testing environment you can provide to test out this service and so on. So really, I think it's a nice example of what benefit it gives if you also focus on the non-users and not just the users. And women, you can see in the sharing economy, they're quite a low share. So there is potential to look at the non-users, but because there are a lot of women within those non-users. Third example and last one is Mobiome, which is focusing on on-demand buses, so regional mobility. And what they do, they work with the different kind of providers and also municipalities who are providing on-demand buses. And what I think is nice, they combine these qualitative interviews, but also with a technical tool. So they developed the web app, which you can also test, where they also include this trip chaining and additional aspects of mobility, which are mostly not included in all those technical tools. And it's still, I would say, a development. With each research project they do, it gets better. But it's already trying to also consider the trip chaining, consider each step of the trip, why you use it, what's the purpose of each trip. And this is also a possibility to not just do it in this qualitative way, but also have it a bit more structured collection of data on the different needs. So yes, altogether, everybody's starting at one point. I would really recommend to utilize really the diversity on your team, maybe bring in also more perspectives on your team's designing mobility. If you use data, really take a look at how, where was this data collected, what kind of maybe gaps are there to consider, and expand your methods if you are collecting data. It's very important to educate yourself. We have a big audience today, but it's also good to talk about it a lot. We still see a big lack of knowledge, and it's a constant learning journey. Also, I think also everybody else can say it for me as well. Every time I do interviews, I talk with people, there is just something new to learn about all these topics. And yes, that was it from my side. Happy to talk a bit more about about all the examples, and an invite if you want to further dive into different topics. And just one hint, the questionnaire, so this survey with the 100 companies and everything, is also on our website to download for free. So if you want to take a closer look, in English and German, both available. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Lina, for your presentation and for sharing these great examples about how we can implement relatively small but very significant changes in products and services so they can really better accommodate all their users, including women and all other kinds of users. And it's not only the ethical thing to do, as you showed it, for society at large, but there's also a clear business case for having more users for your products and services. And I want to highlight something that you mentioned in the beginning of your presentation about how men and women have different roles in positions in companies that influence the way the products are designed. So we get back to the gender gap that Ines is mentioning. So it's really a systemic issue that is connected everywhere. And we saw that you can work with gender related data and get insightful results. So there's a very nice connection between both of your presentations. We are publishing the last poll, I think, of our webinar, which is: after watching the speakers' presentations, do you still feel your organization is applying a gender lens in its work? The responses, the options are: yes, consistently across all areas; yes, but only in specific projects; no, but we want to incorporate it; or no, we do not currently apply a gender lens. And the responses are diverse. We'll check the answers in the end once you finish answering. And thank you everyone who are posting questions in the Q&A section. Now we're going to go to the Q&A part with our dear speakers. And I know some of you would be interested in diving deeper in the topic. So for this, I'm going to share again in the link in the chat the links to the courses of EIT Urban Mobility UMX courses. I'll paste them in the chat. So you can access and have a bit more of information. It's really a short, dynamic course. It's free. It's an excellent way for you to build up quickly knowledge and get certified if you wish. So without further ado, let's start with the Q&A. I will start with two questions to our speakers. So Lina and Ines, I actually want to talk to you, ask you about your career path first, and some advice to the people who are watching us today. And then we'll jump into questions from the audience. So at All Things Urban, we really like to see how people navigate their careers in the fields of urbanism. We get a lot of questions of how to start, how to shift, how to move into certain fields, how to use certain methods. So my first question for both of you, and you can answer whenever you want, what inspired you to work in the field that you're working with through the gender lens? So how did you discover your interest in gender, in mobility, and perhaps share with us a few key moments of your path?
Should I start?
Yes.
Yeah, so I have this great story. I grew up in a very rather egalitarian family. My mother was working, my father was at home, not working due to health issues. So for me, it was just like I grew up, I was thinking we're all equal, right? So, and when I was 18 or 17, I had advanced physics class, and the teacher at the end of each class asked, did the girls get that as well? And I was just like, so I don't know, I couldn't tell because it has never been a topic for me before. So I couldn't tell what was wrong with that question, but I knew that there was something wrong, and I just didn't feel good at this point. So for me, it's basically the gender perspective and the equity and equality aspects. They are there from the start. I cannot let go of them. And in 2013, I came in contact with mobility, and that was when I heard that a lot of car sharing, the free floating car sharing with battery electric vehicles, was mostly used by men. And I was wondering, why is that? And that was my entrance question into the field of mobility. And I used that question to write my dissertation about and answered that. So yeah, that's my story.
Thank you, Ines.
Yeah.
Lina?
For me, it started maybe also quite early because even at school, I was in an informatics school. So several years, the only woman, the only girl in the class, and then started at the technical university. I mean, there I was in a field with a little bit more women, but again, it was also in the with other students, a lot of women gave up because of the professors and so on. So it's tough. Still, mobility was always the field, or quite fast it became the field where I wanted to start. And actually, the topic of gender came to me in that sense that we started the Women in Mobility Network in Austria. It was always already in Germany, and I got to know it in Germany at a conference. And then we said we need that in Austria as well, because I guess all women in the field of mobility and other technical fields know it. If you're at a conference, if you're any event, you may be the only woman or you're very low share. And this network is focusing on the visibility of women and also to raise the share of women in the field of mobility. And we also founded the company Point End based on many requests on, is there data? What is it actually about, and so on. So I kind of fell into the topic.
Great. Thank you to both of you. And from your path, you already progressed a lot in this field, and we have some questions already coming up in the Q&A that we will have to select some of them. But my second question is, what advice would you give to people who would like to include the gender lens in their work? And some people are already asking that in the Q&A. So what is your advice?
Yeah, I think like a really two low-hanging fruits without much effort. Try to find allies in your company who are interested as well. Maybe there is a women network, or maybe there is an LGBTQ plus network or whatever. So you can gather, become a voice that needs to be heard, and then just like push forward with a topic. And usually what I experience is that a lot of people in the decision-making level, it's mostly men, they ask, yeah, but we need some sort of evidence. So what you could do as a first step is have a look at the stuff, at the data, the information that you already have in your company, that you have available. And then you just run a quick analysis, compare men, women, whatever other categories you have in addition in your data sets, and most likely you will find something, because it is very, very significant, or the differences are very significant in most of the mobility areas. So use that, and then you have some evidence that you can present, and from then on continue. And don't get disencouraged at some point when you realize how big that topic is and how complex it is. But yeah, just start.
I would underline that. I mean, that's really important to have allies, to work together, and also to have the facts. Maybe something else, if in some cases it's really difficult to get that. I mean, I know that feeling when you present in front of a crowd which is not interested in the topic, and they can't even look into your eyes after your speech. I had that, and what is good, just to reach the goal, even though it would be nicer to just say it out loud. Sometimes I don't use the word gender or women or any kind of the main goals at all in my presentation, and frame it a bit differently. So to just reach the goal, even so, to make people listen to me, even though they maybe are not interested in the topic I actually want to talk about. And the other part, which is also really important, or helps at least, is always to show the economic value. Almost all of these actions you do, being it providing toilets at train stations or so, it's a value because there may be more users afterwards, and more users means more income. So almost all of those actions also have an economic value, and you can show that, and that helps quite a lot.
Thank you to both of you. So now we have a couple of minutes left to answer some of the questions of the Q&A. I try to select and group them under certain categories. So I would say there's a couple of questions that are related to the urban design or the experience of mobility in the city, and another that are more workplace oriented, and we'll look at if we have time for the rest. But I'll start with the urban design oriented ones. So how can urban design and urban mobility design, specifically the spatial elements, influence women's perception of the city? So the person commented that they often receive comments suggesting that it's factors beyond design, like cultural patriarchy or women or power dynamics, that play a role in these experiences. I will group that question with another one that is a bit maybe similar. Men cycle more than women for everyday mobility, and how can we change that? I think, Lina, you already answered a bit how we can do these changes, but I'll just like leave it for you to answer, and then we'll go to the workplace oriented questions.
Who should answer? Lina, me? Okay.
You can start.
Okay, so the first part, yes, actually there are a lot of things that you can do design-wise in order to make the city or the public space more more inclusive. There is even you can Google that from the Technical University Vienna. They have checklists on that, and I mean Vienna is really far when it comes to gender sensitive urban planning, and they have, I think it was like I from one publication I took eight things that you can do, 8 measures. One is like sufficient lighting, not lightning, no lightning, lighting. Then that you should have or you should make you should get people on the streets in order to oh, how's that called when there are more people there and it's not abandoned, you that thing. So this is one thing. Another thing would be that it would be good to remove any obstacles, that you have barrier-free entrances, all those things. Another thing is that you clean, and because this is very interesting, I find, because dirty environments, like if there is garbage or graffiti, it is perceived as insecure than a clean place, and you can improve the way people perceive that space, that public space, by just cleaning up. And you can do that by giving some sort of responsibility to the people who live there as well, to just, like, I don't know, let them take care of the plants outside and things like that, so that the authorities don't have to do everything. And there are some more. You can look them up online. Just have a look at what Vienna is doing. It's really good. And the second one is with the cycling. Whether men or women cycle more depends heavily on whether the infrastructure is safe or not. If you are cycling, or if you have to cycle on the main road, there are more men cycling. But if you have protected bike lanes and or just like in general bike streets, a bike-friendly infrastructure, then you have partially more women cycling. So that's
I just want to focus on this. I mean, safety, security are really big issues, and that's a big topic also when it comes to cycling, but also walking. And it's also an influence on am I even able to be mobile? If it's not safe enough, if I don't have a path to go to a bus station, if I don't have the access, it's really difficult. What is really nice is, for example, the concept of the 15-minute city. So to really say within 15 minutes, walkable and cyclable, everything that I need within the day should be available. And with that comes many other concepts from super blocks and so on that are in the end providing really safe infrastructure, more greenery, and like a possibility to be mobile. And that also helps if you want to work again. It's much easier if your daily trips are shorter, if it don't consume half of your day. So it's all combined, kind of. And it's not just the products, it's very much about infrastructure.
Thank you, Lina and Ines. Actually, before going into the workplace oriented, there's a question that got really upvoted, which is a bit about the systemic perspective beyond mobility, I would say. So the question is, would you say that perspective, or the way you view reality, I guess, is the biggest challenge in bridging the gender gap in mobility, or are there other systemic problems that need addressing? We kind of know the answer, but let's talk about that. Up to you.
Me first. Okay. Yes, it's the system. It's the system, baby. Just we have to fix the system. So yeah, it's we have a lot of knowledge about that the gender gap in mobility for decades, but it hasn't arrived in practice. And I mean, as long as you have like a gender gap in general in the work participation, if there is a gender gap in who's taking care of the children, the household responsibilities, things like that, you will have an issue with gender sensitive or gender neutral mobility. And as long as way more men are in the decision-making processes, positions, not processes, positions, to design and decide what to do, then of course we will have an issue, and we need to fix that. We have to understand that it is a societal issue, and not only apart from that mobility operators could fix easily.
I would also say that this perspective is also maybe the biggest hope, because you can see every time, for example, a mayor starts cycling, then suddenly they have the perspective of a cyclist and cycling infrastructure gets better. So it's really also an opportunity to push people to change perspective and to bring in these different kind of perspectives. And that's at least that gives me hope. We do a lot of workshops with that. And it's every time they have this feeling like, I've never thought about that. And then you see change. So it's also really I would say really important opportunity, being it people getting children and getting to know how it is, or starting cycling and everything else.
Thank you to both. We have a couple of minutes left, but let's try and squeeze the last questions related to the workplace, because it does matter for all of us professionals who want to make a change in our workplaces. So I'll take the chance to do that, even if we're 2 minutes late to finish. So the question, I'm grouping two questions. First of all, how would you suggest to start addressing the gender gap when the client is prioritizing the normal types of outcomes? And how can employees approach management when they feel their company is not considering project through a gender lens? And what advice would you give for starting that conversation?
And now you start. Okay. No, Lina, you.
No, Ines, you can start. No worries.
I already forgot the question. Is it written somewhere?
I can repeat. So, how can you have conversations with your management to start talking about the gender lens? And what about the clients who want normal types of outcomes?
Oh yeah, yeah. So the thing is, like Lina said before, so I'm answering now on behalf of Lina. No, that you have to show that there is money behind incorporating gender-sensitive approaches into that. So I think that's the lever that you have to push, I don't know, in order to get the things starting, because otherwise they think, yeah, it's nice to have, or maybe it's just like for the public relations, and we can, I don't know, pink wash something or rainbow wash something, and then this is it. Same for the customers.
I can just underline, make it show the economic value, and there are a lot of easy measures also to bring in more diversity in the team.
Great. Thank you to both. And the final questions that we're not going to answer because we can share that later. So people are asking for resources, articles, books, or other that you would recommend in relation to that topic of gender gap in mobility. And yes, to answer the question, we will share some details after this webinar with the recording. You'll receive an email. So here we are. Let's start closing our webinar. So thank you, Ines and Lina, for answering all the questions so thoroughly with so much energy and passion. Thank you for the excellent presentations. I'm sure it's going to be very helpful and clarify some things for people and give arguments to start conversations. We hope it's been of interest for those who asked the questions, everyone who joined today. So the session is soon coming to an end. And before that, again, thank you to EIT Urban Mobility and UMX for hosting this webinar. We are hosting another webinar in the upcoming month. It's about another topic, autonomous vehicles in public transport. Now, we know how this could sound like. We will focus on autonomous vehicles, that how can they actually enhance inclusivity, make public transport more accessible, and harness the best of technological improvements for the public good. Another amazing lineup of speakers and case studies from an urbanist perspective. So keep an eye on All Things Urban social media accounts and newsletter, and EIT Urban Mobility's accounts. Again, here are in the chat the links to the courses of UMX that you can check out. And all of you who participated today, you will receive the follow-up email, the recording. So that's it from our side. We hope you enjoyed this session. You will be redirected to a short feedback poll at the end once you close the webinar, but I'll share it here in the chat just in case some of you might want to access it directly from that link. So thank you very much again for EIT Urban Mobility, All Things Urban team, and have a great day, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.